And this is the point in the show that I introduce our guest analysts who are here to give their perspectives on nearly everything we've covered in the program and beyond. And today I'm joined here in the studio by the public affairs commentator, Arise news analyst and head of mass communications at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Adeniyi, and by the policy strategist, Arise news analyst and founder and executive director of Agora Policy, Waziri Adio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Let me come to you first, Prof. What do you make of the robust defense there from Reno Omokri and his interpretation of the Constitution vis-a-vis the convention of the PDP?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. Naturally, political discourses like this can be very, very fascinating. But of course, there are some key issues there, like you imagine. One is that I just believe that the questions around, zoning, I thought it was already dying. I didn't know for some reason that it can once more be played up, because we thought the parties had moved away from it, because the candidates have emerged and we are thinking about elections, we are thinking about campaign. We're now getting bothered about issues, so going back to zoning again, it's all right, especially in the case of PDP, where we're having accusations around the candidate that, yes, he priced himself as a unifier and it's been impossible for him to unify the PDP. So if they are coming, and of course arguments have also come in to say that, unification does not mean, it shouldn't end only with PDP. If he has the country under his feet, he will do a better job. But there are some key issues there. The robust defense that Reno Omokri, a political activist, always very trenchant, always very convinced about his interests, and of course very courageous to a very large extent, no doubt. But the important point that I think comes out from his argument is that, the argument around zoning, justifying the fact of PDP going against the prescriptions of their constitution actually came because of the personality of Atiku. I'm not sure if it was another candidate, that was running, in the PDP. I'm not sure the PDP intelligentsia will have massed around him the way they have massed around Atiku. His personality must have broken all the barriers of disagreement, all the arguments in favor of jettisoning the so-called or the assumed zoning that PDP have always had. That's what I think actually happened. So the personality of Atiku is actually towering, and you can see all the persons, all the intelligentsias in PDP raising argument supportive of his candidacy. But how that one will go again will be countered by the fact that you're talking about zoning, that if, because we had the last PDP president coming from the south, the next one should come from the north. But arguments have also come in that to say that we're talking about one Nigeria, so whether the party it is PDP or APC, we're talking about the same country.
Yeah.
And of course, if we have had 8 years of president coming from the north, the next thing, should be that the next president should go to the south, which was, a very important point that Governor Duke actually made. So that's what I think, really,
to add to that fact, Waziri, I mean, we also know that the Atiku ran in 2019, so he had the chance of that presidency giving him the opportunity to run, and then the idea was for it to switch to the other side. But I think the key point here, and you are one of the best crunchers that I know when it comes to knowing things and interpreting things. I mean,
very kind, Charles.
He said that Donald Duke had made some inaccuracy. He didn't like the word inaccuracy, but I mean that's essentially what he was saying around the constitution of the PDP and the issue of zoning. How do you interpret that?
Okay, I think we should start from what the PDP constitution says. And many times he said, if you gave him the permission, he would have read the constitution. But if you look at the constitution in section 7.3c, what it says is that the party should zone
absolutely. That's why I didn't see any point in him reading it, because that's not the issue, really.
With respect to principles of justice and all of that. So even that section of the constitution is a bit woolly. It's not as specific as both parties have made it to be. Neither Mr. Duke nor Mr. Omokri can say specifically that the constitution says it should go from north to south. I think there was a time when it was like that. I think that was amended. But the Constitution also gave the power to the neck of the party to decide, where where it should go.
Right.
But in the wisdom of the leaders of PDP, in 2022, they decided to throw it open, meaning anybody that was interested, whether you are from the south or from the north, you could give it a shot. And eventually, we saw how it went.
Yeah.
Alhaji Atiku Abubakar emerged as the candidate of the party. But I think, the issue, where the issue is now, is not about whether Atiku should be the candidate or not. They are not contesting that.
Yeah.
So what they are saying is that
because he's the candidate.
Because he's the candidate, the chair also, cannot be from the north, right? That is also a valid argument, but there's also a counter argument, which is that, why don't you wait until after the election, right? Like Omokri said, the convention, and all of that. But I guess there are some other issues. There are some other issues within PDP
that we're not necessarily aware of.
Yeah, there are some other issues that they are not, all the parties are not talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Because the way they make it to look is that once IU goes, all the issues will be resolved. I think IU is just being used as a mask, for the issues that they are papering over. The fact of the matter is that, before Atiku emerged, the sentiment in the country was that the presidency should go to the south, whether in APC or PDP or anywhere else, right? Because of, some people believe that PDP decided to throw it open just because of one person. And you saw how the convention went. Some people actually believe that there was a conspiracy. The way Tambuwa, who's from the north, stepped down for Atiku, the way Ayu, who is supposed to be the chairman of the party, also congratulated Tambuwa after the election to say, oh, you are the hero of the, so there's that, and also the numbers, right? In PDP, PDP has 13 governors now. 8 of them are from the south, right? And when you look at Wike, there are 5 of them. And as former Governor Duke said, there's actually quite a silent sixth.
Yeah.
So that's a power block that is trying to assert itself, not just to play a role before the election, but I have a feeling that they're actually also playing for beyond the election. So that's why I'm saying, I think there's a power game going on within the party that both parties are aware of, but they are not talking about. But they are talking on the basis of principle. Oh, the chairman cannot be from the north, and the candidate cannot be from the north at the same time. And the other people are saying, no, what our constitution says is that even if the chairman goes, right, the next person will be from the north. And why do you want to change the chairman before the election, and all of that? So, and that candidate Atiku also says that, it's not my position to remove the chair. Is the neck of the party.
And to that extent, he is right.
So, yes. So all of them are on the surface clinging to principles, but I think beneath that there are issues that both parties are not admitting to, and
things that are simmering underneath.
Yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me come to you, Prof. Let's move away from that. The other thing that we talked about with Reno Omokri was the issue of the floods. Which appear to have turned a little bit political, with the Labour Party candidate Peter Obi visiting people displaced by the floods, more than 1 million people displaced, more than 600 dead. And he called on other leading candidates to also suspend their campaigns and come and visit those who are displaced. What do you think of all that and the way that Reno Omokri reacted to it? Because he thought it was a big photo op. For the Labour Party, that they were using it as a photo.
But before I go to that, Charles, I think it's also very important for us to not to look at politics as something that is mechanical. Politics sometimes has to be concerned with the soul.
It's human.
Emotions and sentiments
absolutely.
are very, very important.
It's an emotive thing.
So many things are not just about regulations, about rules, about constitution. Sometimes you bother about the intangible, which is political sensitivities, ethnic sensitivities. Really, absolutely. So in political calculations, in zoning, all those things should have come to play. And I think that's why the northern governors, APC governors, are still being commended, for the decision position they took, asking that their flag bearer should come from the south, irrespective of the potency of some candidates from the north as well. They made those sacrifices and say it should go to the south. So sensitivity matters. It's not just about constitution.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree.
So to your second point, yes, it's all right. I think, I will agree, with the move of Labour Party presidential candidate, for instance, that other candidates should also be supportive at the level of association, at the level of, it's not just about the optics, politics again, it's about being responsive.
But it's also about optics.
All right,
I mean,
it's being responsive, feeling the pulse of the people, associating with them at moments of trial. So it was a very smart move on the part of Peter Obi, for instance, to say, okay, I'm going to suspend my campaign this time, and probably, to sympathize with those who are affected. There must have been some failures on his part in the past. It doesn't matter. Things can be corrected. Life is about making progress.
Absolutely.
Bringing about changes. Making improvement. An improvement comes when you grow from your past misdeeds or your past inadequacy. So I want to believe that that's what he's probably doing by asking other aspirants. But it's up to them to also respond in different ways. They may not think that suspending the campaign, because their timetables are different, they may not think that suspending the campaign is the solution. They might also devise other ways of associating with the plights of the people, because they are leaders, political leaders seeking to rule a giant like Nigeria. And what are you leading? What are you ruling if you cannot make sacrifices, if your actions cannot be centered towards improving the conditions of others, whether physical or non-physical? So that's what I think is coming out to play.
I get
and I'm not going to really, Reno has his convictions.
Yeah.
He's a politician. He has his convictions. I'm not going to judge him for holding to that conviction, but in my own opinion, I think that Peter Obi was smart, and of course, it may not again be the only solution. Other aspirants might decide to respond in different ways. Yeah.
Okay, Waziri, you've seen elections in Nigeria, you've seen elections in other parts of the world. Is it important for a candidate to do what Peter Obi did, or is it enough for the sort of thing that Reno Mokri said that Atiku was doing from behind the scenes, giving donations and all that sort of thing, but not necessarily going there to be seen with, visually seen, empathizing with the victims of the floods?
Okay, I want to start from the fact that we're in a national emergency. This is huge. The last time we had something like this was 10 years ago, in 2012, when the country was almost submerged. And now 33 states affected, more than 600 people dead, more than what we had the last time. We're not treating this with the urgency that it deserves. And there's a government in place. So for me, the starting point is not just about the president directing the emergency response
the president
agencies.
Himself.
Yeah, the president. There. Yeah, it should be there. It should also mobilize the military and the rest of the society about. So how do we mobilize resources, to come to the aid of our citizens who are in need. So that is very important. And yes, what Peter Obi has done is good politics, is good optics. But that doesn't mean that is what necessarily what every candidate should do. They have to decide what they want to do. But what I want to, this is a great opportunity for them, not just to show empathy, and not just to also foreshadow the kind of president that they want to be, right? So Peter Obi has done something that is very smart, like Professor Adeniyi said, and something that has put him some step ahead of the others. Others might have their own responses and all of that, but people want, one of the things that people want is a leader that connects with them.
Absolutely.
Is a leader that is not just a commander-in-chief, but also a comforter-in-chief, right? So, but having said that, it's also a great opportunity for us to start talking about climate change and how to respond to that. So this is a policy,
as a campaign issue.
Yeah. This is a policy moment. And what you want to see is that, because we're going to see more of this as time goes on, what's your response?
Absolutely.
To what do you think we should do? What are we doing right? What are we not doing right? What else do we need to do? How much would that cost? Where would the money come from? So we need to see that. More than just symbolic actions, we need to see concrete plans. And
Well,
that is what I've always been talking about.
Yeah, I can't wait for the next bit of Agora policies crunching figures to come out, because I know you're going to be looking at security. And talking about security, Professor Adeniyi, protesters clashing with security forces in Lagos today at the Lekki toll gate. Police firing tear gas to disperse demonstrators. They were marking the 2nd anniversary of the EndSARS protests. They gathered at the Lekki toll gate. That's a famous scene. The police claimed the protesters had become lawless, and officers decided to fire tear gas. I don't know what you're hearing about that, but that sort of dovetails into another election issue, which is police reform.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate, but I think that we'll have a problem of not learning from our mistakes in this country. And of course, it probably has to do with the mindset of authorities. You know, we operate from the mindset of governmentality, mindset of enforcement rather than engagement, coming to understanding, coming to being tolerant of citizens, you know. Otherwise, I thought that there are so much lessons that we should have learned from the EndSARS protest, because it was a movement, it was a statement made by the youth of this country that we have come of age, you know. And of course, this is the path that we need to chart, you know, the authorities should chart. But unfortunately, the philosophy behind that protest was completely misunderstood by the authorities. It was interpreted in circles that it was actually a move towards regime change. Very unfortunate, you know, which was completely
completely as a threat.
Yeah, a threat, you know, completely distanced from what the original philosophy was. So if we understood it rightly, I'm sure by now we should have made progress, such that when there are protests, you know, when there are peaceful protests, all you need to do, like we see it being done in other places, is to just probably cordon off the place, provide protection for protesting citizens, you know, such that they can ventilate their anger, you know, hear them out.
Christ, you're so civilized,
it's a social process.
Surely.
Yeah, protests are social processes where citizens, you know, ventilate, they express their feelings, and of course you deal with it going forward. So I thought we should have learned from it. And what's wrong with youth celebrating what happened 2 years ago? I don't see anything wrong with it, but what happens, the downside is actually
and reform is an ongoing process.
An ongoing thing.
So you've got to keep the pressure on.
Absolutely, but I don't think it's too late yet for authorities to retrace their steps. You know, understand the positions of the youths. You know, of course, we're in an era of youth budge. Youths are making statements in the evolution of our politics, and even in contemporary politics, they are making statements. So if we refuse to understand them at this time, then of course we might be heading in the wrong direction. But like I said earlier, it is not too late for authorities to retrace their steps, appreciate the youths, you know, and rather treat them like people you need to court, you need to involve and integrate in the evolution or the discourse around how nationhood is constructed.
We've got 2 minutes left, and obviously you've got the final word there, but that might have been another good place for presidential candidates to go and be seen, to identify with people, because I mean, that thing means a lot to a very large voting demographic in this country, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And what
to all of us, because police reform is essential.
Absolutely. It's something that, you know, that should be of interest to all of us. It's not just the youth. The youth were not just protesting for themselves, right? And even if they were protesting for themselves, they are people's kids, they are people's brothers, they are people's sisters, you know. So in a way, you know, when you are, it's something like a campaign for a better country, you know, because if you have the police, there's the representation of the state that should provide security, protection for citizens, now turning against the citizens. There's something wrong there, you know, and, you know, that's something that, you know, I don't think anybody, even with people within government, they have issues with that. But don't also forget that the Lekki toll gate also became a contested ground based on what happened 2 years ago, right? So, so there will be two things in conflict. One will be, yes, people have the right to protest. The other will be, can this go out of hand? But at the same time, the responsibility belongs to the state. You shouldn't abridge people's rights to protest.
Absolutely.
If your concern is that, you know, this might go out of hand, you make sure that you have enough guardrails to ensure that it doesn't go out of hand, to make sure that when people are protesting, that doesn't abridge the rights of other people who want to go about their daily businesses. So the responsibility still falls back to the state.
Okay. I want to thank both of you very much indeed. And just a quick note before we go. Amnesty International saying the police are still detaining protesters since 2020, about 40 of them, and that those who had been released spoke of torture and ill treatment. So it does not appear as though that same police force has changed fundamentally. But I want to thank both of you very much indeed. Professor Adeniyi, who is a public affairs commentator, a Rise News analyst and head of mass communications at Bayes University in Abuja. And of course, the policy strategist, a Rise News analyst and founder and executive director of Agora Policy, Waziri Adio. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and London, bye-bye and thank you for watching.